I'm super excited to have on the show a really special guest who is a ex-CIO. So essentially going from a really high executive position to now transitioning into supporting people at a personal level and empowering others to really understand how they can change their life, and having so many really awesome life experiences to share with so many individuals on LinkedIn. And I'm super excited to talk about self-mastery and the leadership behind the visionary Justin Wright. So Justin, I hope you can share a little bit more about yourself and talk to us about your transition into what you do today.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I started out in the corporate world 22 years ago in a marketing manager position. That's what my MBA is in. And I worked my way up to the C-suite and was a CIO at the end of my career. And in that process, I learned a lot about career transitions and how do you reinvent yourself. I went from marketing into sales, into business operations, into IT. And each time the common theme or thread throughout that transition was my ability to engage with people, connect with people, motivate teams, inspire people. And that's really what I love to do. I love to mentor young professionals. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to do next with my life, I had the opportunity to transition out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship and start a company. And now I'm working with people one-on-one to help them find ways to transform themselves and reinvent themselves, whether it's a career transition, a pivot like I've done multiple times, or even a big life event or life change that they want to make. And so that's what inspires me, and that's what I love to do to help empower other people.
Yeah, so I know you have so much history around thinking about working with individuals. What in particular inspires you to think about, you know, impact, starting at the connection that you have with another individual? So take us back to maybe an experience of either someone actually working with you and helping you grow in that skill set or understanding your strength, or is it the opposite, where you're sitting in the chair of an executive leadership and you're noticing how you're impacting others?
Yeah, one of the biggest examples in my life of the ability to transform yourself and to inspire others came from a senior executive that I was mentored by at my previous company. And I was going through a big life change at the time where I had lost a lot of weight. I was inspired for health reasons to work on my my own physical health. And I was inspired by my sister to start running. And so I went from being a total couch potato to being able to run a 5K, doing this Couch to 5K program where over the course of about 9 weeks, you increase your distance a little bit each week to where you can run a 5K. And I thought, man, I did something really different for me, really important that I was inspired by. And then the senior executive told me that he's run 19 marathons. And I thought, wow, that's amazing that somebody could run 19 marathons in their life. And he's like, yeah, why don't you train with me and you can run a half marathon with me? He even said, you pick one wherever it is and I'll meet you there and we'll run it together. And so where I thought my limitation was at 5K, now I'm thinking, wow, I got to figure out how do I run 13 miles, right? And it motivated me to stretch myself. I started working even harder. And believe it or not, I told him, hey, on this date, I'm going to be in Moab, Utah, and I want to run Canyonlands half marathon. And he showed up and he was there and he met me and we ran that race together. And it was so, he believed in me to the point where I figured out how to do something that I didn't ever think was possible. Never thought that I would run a half marathon, and I did it and I finished it and I was really proud of myself. But mostly it taught me the power of somebody who you really respect believing in you and how that can make you do some amazing things. And so that was something that I really enjoyed and learned a lot from. And now I hope to be able to inspire other people that way.
That's such a huge story that you just shared. The fact that you have that personal relationship with an executive senior who could be present with you in your personal life journey, and not necessarily, connect with you through the hardship necessarily, but inspire you of what's possible, and reinforcing that, and showing up. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And then there was also your sister, you said, who kind of, in a way, sparked some new ideas and led the way to better health and lifestyle. What got you into that kind of conversation of like, I want to focus on my health, versus like into some people when they're, in their role and work, oh no, I got to do better with my work. I got to kind of push myself somehow. And instead, you're thinking along the lines of like, no, it's my health first. How did that come
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I was going through a difficult period of my life. In fact, part of it was there were some changes that were happening at work where I had to start in a different role that I didn't really enjoy. And I felt like my life was kind of out of control. But this was one thing that I could control, was my health and my own physical well-being. And I had some health problems, but at the moment, the pivotal moment for me was I took my son, he was young, he was 7 years old. I took him to a neighborhood carnival, and they had a Ferris wheel there, and we stood in line to get on the Ferris wheel. And I was really overweight. I was weighing about 300 pounds at the time. And I remember we sat on the little on the Ferris wheel seat, and the attendant tried to buckle the belt over my belly, but it was so big he couldn't do it. And it was really embarrassing. I was sitting there with my son, and we had to get off the ride. And that was a moment where I was like, hey, I got to do something different, and change my lifestyle in order to be able to be more physically fit and be there for my son and be healthy for him. And so that was one of the moments that spurred me to go on a health journey. And I studied nutrition. I learned how to, limit my portions to a point where I could lose weight. And over the course of about a year, I lost over 100 pounds. And that's the same time when I started running. My sister was doing 5K. She mentioned it at a family dinner one time. And I'm like, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. I want to do that. And so I started this Couch to 5K. I ran a 5K. Then I decided, hey, I can do a little bit more, run a 10K. And then my mentor said, hey, let's do this half marathon. So it just kind of built from there. But it was a really exciting journey for me. And it helped me have more belief in myself that I can do hard things. And that served me really well in my life. That was 11 years ago. And since then, I've been able to accomplish even more big things because of that risk that I took, that chance that I took, and proved to myself that I could do it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is literally, you took an experience, but then really the emotion around that experience, and you owned it instead of kind of like pushing it away and saying, oh, I'm really embarrassed, like, and getting, working out your ego and saying like, hey, it was whatever kind of thing, and ignoring it. You actually answered the call of like, hey, there's something that I need to do here. I'm going to listen to my emotions, and make the direction of how can I do better. And I love that you thought of yourself into the future of like, how can I be there for my own son? I'm just wondering, to someone who may not really have kids, and who are listening, what would you have done if you were not a father, and you didn't have anyone to kind of care for, but what would you do to kind of jumpstart that conversation with yourself?
I think part of it comes down to your values. So what is most important to you in your life? And that can change over time. So for instance, when I was early in my career, one of the most important things to me was a career advancement. And I wanted to learn new skills, and I wanted to move up the ladder. I wanted to obviously get more income. And so that was something that I put a lot of focus on. But now that's less important to me. Obviously, I've made it through a lot of changes in the corporate world. I've gotten to a certain level in the corporate world, and I've decided that what's even more important to me is to be able to give back to other people. And so I wanted to start a business that allowed me to have a lot more flexibility and freedom to be able to do what I love. It also gives me a chance to spend more time with my family. That's a big priority for me right now. So figuring out what your values are helps guide what you're going to do to make them the priority and to achieve those things. So, first I would recommend is just sit down and really reflect. What do you care about? What's most important to you in your life right now in this moment? And write those things down, and then use that to guide you in whatever you need to do to start moving towards your goals.
That's really powerful. And so you went from someone who was working in, the corporate system and really focused on your career. Can you help us walk through how you went about it to, focus on yourself and determine where you wanted to grow? So, for example, I know sometimes with communication, and especially someone new transitioning into like a corporate setting, or they're trying to go from one tier to the next, and they're trying to express that, hey, I'm ready for the next role or position. What would you want to do to kind of, I guess you could say, quote unquote, sell yourself, right? So like, is there a better way of talking about it so that you can own your integrity, along with getting what you want so that you can continue to grow in a corporate setting?
Absolutely. There's a couple of things that come to mind as you were asking that question. One of them is people tend to doubt themselves and their capabilities. I think imposter syndrome is a big deal for a lot of people. I've experienced it myself. I know a lot of corporate executives have that. A lot of successful people in general have self-doubts from time to time. It's totally normal. It's part of the human experience. So just recognize that first, I think is important. Second of all, I don't think we take advantage enough of mentors, coaches, people who've done it before, who've gotten through the challenges that you face and are at a level that you want to be at. If you know somebody that you aspire to be like, that they have the role that you want, or you really like their leadership style, talk to them about it. And I think what people will find is, I know when somebody approaches me and says, hey, I want to learn from you, I like that. I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing, and I'm happy to share whatever I can to help them. So don't worry about whether you're going to bother somebody, or, if they're too busy. If they are, they'll let you know, and that's okay, and move on. But if my experience has been, most people that have reached a certain level in their career like to mentor others. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask. And then the third thing is, self-promotion has a bad rap. People don't want to tout themselves or their accomplishments, that kind of thing. And I can understand that. Being boastful, being arrogant, I don't like to do that either. At the same time, everybody has accomplished some really impressive things in their life. They've overcome impressive challenges, and it's okay to share that. And one of the things that I always encourage people that I mentor to do is to ask questions. So if you're in a meeting, if you're on a Zoom call and you're listening to an executive speaking or a leader speaking, and they come to the end of the session and they say, all right, who's got a question? There's a big pause then, and nobody wants to ask a question, and everybody's embarrassed, and it's really awkward. And I'll tell you, from being on the other side, that leader that was speaking is just as awkward for them. Break the silence. Ask the question, because most people in the room have questions. They're just too afraid to ask. It's a great way to show your interest in the company's success. It's a great way to help the leader out and throw them a question that they can answer and break that awkward silence. And it also gives a chance to show that you're a thoughtful person, that you can ask good questions. And those kinds of things help to improve your image to the people that are making decisions about your career. So those are some simple ways, using mentorship and being willing to kind of put your name out there and ask questions and speak up. Those are really important.
That's really great that you mentioned those areas, because you're right. I think sometimes the self-doubt factor can make us do the opposite of asking others the question, but asking ourselves the question, and then kind of doing this backward effect of, making us feel less than. And then at the end of the day, we're not really getting anywhere further than where we were. And we haven't learned anything new. So the idea is, if you do have a question, maybe instead of trying to kind of consult with yourself all the time, perhaps find the right people or crowd who are not judgmental about, ideas or questions, and just really allow yourself to ask those questions so you can learn. And I think you're right that most people who do ask those questions tend to go further, because I mean, at your stage, right, being an executive too, and now owning your own business, you're constantly having to be curious and ask those questions if you want to grow as an individual and in your profession. Do you have any other thoughts around that?
Yeah, the best leaders are always learning. So I know myself, I'm reading books all the time. I'm trying to meet people that do things that I want to do, to learn from them, the experts. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time writing on LinkedIn. And as of 3 months ago, I had never done an original post on LinkedIn. I'd used it for 10 years as a networking platform or to look for jobs, but I'd never put a post on it. And the first time I did it, it was scary, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was worried about what people would think about me. And I got over that fear and started posting. And now I've gotten to the point where I really enjoy it. It's a creative outlet for me to be able to write and post on there. I love the engagement that it brings with the community. But the way that I got from when I first started 3 months ago to now is by talking to experts. And I used a coach who opened my eyes to the world of LinkedIn platform. I've got mentoring from other large creators, and all of that has helped me to grow. I wouldn't be where I am today in the last 3 months without their guidance and their support. So the same way that I advanced in my career using mentors and learning and constantly being curious and stretching myself is exactly what I'm doing now in the entrepreneur world.
That's impressive. The fact that you took something from all of your learning experiences to tackling something new and seeing it as just another learning experience or a curve. And it's nothing to really be afraid of. But if you can start with yourself, that conversation tends to be effective. You know how to go and go through it. So I guess what I'm trying to wondering is, can you walk me through like the kind of mental or the kind of internal conversation you might have where people tend to be pretty negative earlier on, right? And then yet you're able to kind of have this, I don't know if you can call it a cushion or something, but you're able to recall, hey, I can do better than that. What is that mental dialogue that you have that allows you to kind of push through barriers or go through multiple breakthroughs over and over again without experiencing burnout, I hope?
Yeah. So if confidence is an issue for you, and I know it is for a lot of people, it's been a big issue for me in my life too. One of the best ways to build confidence is by taking action. And now I know that's kind of a catch-22, because to gain confidence, you have to do things, but you're afraid to do things because you don't have the confidence. So I read a book by Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a great book. And the message in the book is everybody's going to feel fear. It's part of life. The people who are able to succeed are the ones that can just do it anyway. So you feel it, it's an emotion, it's a real feeling, and you just push through it and do it anyways. And start with little things that scare you, but they're manageable. You don't have to go for the big things right away, but you start with the little things. And every time you do something that scares you, you get a little bit more confidence. You gain a little bit more perspective. You see that you can do it. You start to believe in yourself a little bit more. And over time, that adds up to where you are doing big things. Another technique that I use a lot is the 5-second rule that Mel Robbins talks about in her book. And the way that that works is when you have an instinct to do something, you've got 5 seconds before your brain talks you out of it. So the best thing to do is just to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and go, take action. And I do this, I do this, if you're struggling to get out of bed in the morning, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just move, get out of bed. If you're struggling to go to the gym, you need to work out, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I'm heading to the gym. I'm not backing down. Even like, if you want to train yourself to take cold showers or to jump in a cold swimming pool or something like that, rather than stand there thinking about it, letting your brain talk you out of this, how painful it's going to be or how uncomfortable it's going to be, just do it. And that's a good way to get started on those little things to start building that confidence.
Those are really great tips and tricks to help, work with your brain and create a new habit or mindset in the meantime. So I do have a follow-up question around the 5-second rule, at least to your experience, where I'm thinking that there might be a conversation around, well, if you're constantly doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just acting, couldn't that be considered sometimes being a bit impulsive? Or is it there's a way to kind of understand that what you're doing is of good value? Like, how would you know the difference? Because there are certain, times where you're just acting, but you're not really thinking it through, versus times where it's according to the direction that you want to lead, and then you're just self-doubting yourself. So you need to say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to act upon that.
Both are important. So what you've highlighted is that there's time to reflect and to think and to analyze, to gather information. I love doing that as well. That's an important part of life. Reflection in particular, kind of looking back over your experiences, how things are going. Are you moving in the direction of your goals? That's really important. And for me, that comes in meditation or in journaling or in when I'm trying to kind of set strategy for my business. That's when I use that deep thinking reflection time. What I'm talking about in terms of the 5-second rule is I already know which direction I want to go, but I'm feeling lazy right now, or I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this situation, or I'm starting to overthink things and starting to get analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. And that's when I need that just little push to kind of get me going and get me acting. So definitely there's different purposes for these different tools that you have, and both of them are important.
So yeah, really great segue there, because we're kind of talking a little bit more about balance of like when to kind of pull back and reflect, and when to execute and make those decisions fast so you can learn from it. So if you could give me an idea, walk us through like, how do you balance so that you don't have to go through burnout, if that's something that's possible, or do you actually experience burnout and kind of have to reflect and then, learn from that?
Yeah, it's a bigger problem, I think, today than it's been even in the past. I know that burnout has existed for a long time, I'm sure, and a lot of people have experienced it. I've experienced it myself in my career at different phases. Nowadays, there's so much attention gathering, technology and things, social media, obviously. There's your commitments at work, your commitments with your family or your friends. You've got your own personal ambitions that you want to achieve things. And all of this comes together, and it can cause you to feel anxious. It can cause you to worry about the future. Are you doing enough? It can cause you to overcommit to things and end up stretching yourself too thin. So I've been there in all of those situations. And I think what's really important is for people, again, to go back to what is their values. So if you start with, like writing down a list of 3 to 5 things that are most important to you. Maybe you're at a point in your life when your family is the number one thing for you, or your faith, or your physical, energy levels, and you really want to focus on getting more physically fit. Or maybe it's that you really want to develop a new skill that's going to help you advance in your career. So write down those 3 to 5 things in order and use that as a guide to help you make decisions so that you don't have to balance each decision on its own. So for example, if my priorities are number 1, my family, number 2, my health, number 3, my career ambitions, then when my friends call and say, hey, let's go out tonight, and you had already planned to spend some time working on your career, then it's an easy decision. Hey, sorry, this isn't a great time. Thanks for thinking of me. Let's do it next week. Right now, I've got another priority. So that can help you start to balance, what you're focusing on, what you're putting your effort into. Another thing is setting boundaries. So one thing that I'm a big proponent of is people live by their calendars. Schedule on your calendar what's most important to you. So if most important to you is, your health, then schedule your time that you're going to be exercising, you're going to be sleeping, and your downtime, your self-care time. Put those on your calendar and treat them like an important meeting, just like you would a meeting with your boss. And that way you're not always pushing those things aside and focusing just on work or just on your commitments to other people, and making sure that your commitments to yourself are equally important.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, where limiting your focus instead of trying to spread yourself thin allows you to be happier, feel more fulfilled, because you're basically living according to your values, according to what helps you to, bring out the best version of yourself each day. So I think that's really great that if you could think about, going back to like your, I'm just thinking about your coaching experiences now of when you're working with people and they're coming to you, what are some of the top reasons for how, people might want to consult with you in terms of self-mastery? Is it more around like mental health? Is it more around like the physical health, the combination of both? Like, how would you work with someone who you want to continue to empower long term?
Yeah. It's all across the board. So again, it goes back to kind of what are the priorities for people. So one thing that a lot of people are looking for information or help on is advancement in their career. So if they want to pivot their career from one area to another, or maybe they're in a management role and they're really wanting to move up into the executive type of positions. Maybe they got laid off at work and they're looking for a way to reinvent themselves and to start over in a new career area. All of those things are coachable. All of those things, there's great tools and techniques that you can use with people to help them recognize their potential and grow. And then on the personal side, besides my physical transformation that I've been through, I've also healed myself from an autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis, and I found natural ways to heal. And that's something that I help people work through as well. A lot of times I think if you look at your health in a holistic way, stress and anxiety can weigh on you, that can manifest itself physically. Also, there's lifestyle things that can be impacting your health. And so I can help guide people through that process that I've been through myself as well. So there's a lot of different things. Obviously, just helping people find their self-confidence and their ability to believe in themselves and be resilient and get through challenging times is something that everybody experiences.
Wow, well, very impressive that you were able to heal yourself. That's not an easy task to do, to be so mindfully aware of your body and its needs. And can I ask you in that regard, did you have to seek out like a medical professional to work with, or is it more of, the more like spiritual, like meditational practices, like the more abstract type of things? Like, how did you kind of support yourself through that healing journey?
Yeah, it's we could do a whole podcast just on this. So my experience was about 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and it hit me at a time in my career when I was really stretched. I was traveling every week for business. I was speaking at various meetings and things. I had a lot on my plate, in addition to my family, in addition to, my own personal needs. And I wasn't paying a very good attention to my body, and my body needed to tell me something that I was doing too much. And so this was probably a way that it was doing that. And it caused me to have to kind of re-examine my life and decide what really was important to me. Over the course of a few years, I worked with a lot of different healthcare providers, doctors, and I tried all kinds of different techniques. I tried, obviously, the Western medicine, the Eastern medicine, acupuncture, meditation, all of the different things. And eventually I found a protocol that works for me, that helps me to manage the symptoms so that they're not interrupting my life. And also, it makes my body healthier in the process. So it was quite a journey. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, but I'm glad that I've had that experience because it really helped me to focus on what was important to me and figure out how to find that harmony that you need between your career and your family and your own health and well-being. And now I'm much better at it than I was years ago.
That's awesome. Well, first of all, congratulations, like on making that leap. You know, because it's such a scary experience to know that there's something kind of eating away your body, and you don't know how to kind of work on that and trying to find answers. So it's such a huge relief when you can learn that you've overcome that as well. So I just see that you're constantly inspiring others, yourself, in this journey. And something I just want to speak on is you have this essence of like positivity. Were you always this positive? And if not, like, how did you kind of work on that?
I wish that probably would have saved me from a lot of pain and frustration in my life if I had been. Now, that was something that I had to learn too. And a lot of that comes from gratitude. So I'm a big believer that you can reframe your thoughts. You can reframe your beliefs. A belief is just something that you think about often or that you've been trained to believe. And if you change your thoughts, you can change your whole mindset and your whole life. And one way that I've done that is through gratitude, practicing gratitude. If you're struggling with negativity, if you're having a hard time seeing what's good in your life right now, one of the ways that I have been able to reshape my own thinking is just to take a minute every morning when I wake up, first thing, and think about a few things, 3 things that I'm grateful for in my life that moment. It could be as simple as I just took a breath and it felt good. You know, I'm grateful for the bed that I sleep in. I'm grateful for the roof over my head. If that's all that you can find to be grateful for, that's enough for that moment. And then eventually you start to expand it and you realize that you're grateful for your friends and you're grateful for the people that support you in your life and you're grateful for your children or you're grateful for that moment that you had laughing with your sister or whatever it is. And then if you can finish your day that same way, think about a few things that you're grateful for, that sets you up for the next day. And it turns into kind of that snowball effect where it starts to expand. And rather than focusing on what you're lacking, what you're missing from your life, you start focusing on what you have. And that changes your whole perspective into being grateful, into being happy, into finding joy in the moment. And I've found that it compounds in my life. It makes me start to think in a more positive way.
That's really great. And as you were talking, I was just thinking, previously we were talking a lot about, you know, what is that, some ways to kind of help you go overcome multiple obstacles, right? Or like new experiences and taking it on with confidence. And you mentioned a few different ways to do that, but I'm also thinking one of those is actually showing gratitude and showing daily gratitude so that you can continue to expand your mindset, because you know our lives start with how we think and what we allow in our head. Then the other part is being aware of what you wish to have more of in your head, and then reducing or you know, kind of substituting for any negative with more positive or more things that brings you joy. And the thing that kind of that made me think about outside of this was that's, you know, like personally, some people and even like myself, like when you go through trauma even and your body has experienced trauma, your brain has experienced trauma, right? It's like it's a physical memory and it's an emotional memory. But if you're trying something new, it's scary, and your body, your mind is going to try to resist that. But then I sense that the idea of gratitude allows you to have compassion on yourself, and in a way it protects you from trying to do self damage and harm of like, hey, you're not good enough, and all these different critical moments where you're really just trying to heal. And I think gratitude allows that openness for healing. Would you say is something around that as well?
Now, I have a lot of empathy for people who've been through some really traumatic things in their lives. And, it's important to be patient with yourself and to be compassionate with yourself. I think a lot of us tend to be kinder to other people, our friends and our loved ones, than we are to ourselves. So that's a great place to start. And I agree with you that gratitude is a nice way to practice that and start to recognize when you're having those negative thoughts, that inner critic that a lot of us have, and try to turn that around and focus on the positive instead. It took me a long time to learn these lessons. This is something that I've been working on for many, many years. And I really want to instill that foundation in others. And one way that I'm doing that is I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's a lot of fun. She's a lot of joy in my life. And every night when I put her to bed, I ask her the same question. I say, "What are you grateful for today?" And of course, she's 3 years old. So half the time she says something really silly, or she doesn't know what to say. And so she needs some help. And I ask her, some prompting questions. I say, "Are you grateful that we took a walk today and that you got to, play outside at the park? Or are you grateful for our dog Hannah and the fun time that you had throwing the toy for her?" Just some little things to kind of prompt her. And it turns into a fun conversation every day. But really what I'm trying to do is help her to recognize those things so that when she gets a little bit older, she can draw on that experience. And I think if more and more people can just take those few little moments in their day to pause and think about something positive, something that they're happy about, it can really change their whole mindset.
Yeah. And can you tell me a little bit more about that with your daughter? Because I'm so curious about a child to an actual adult. And I think you probably use some things you learn with your child into your coaching conversations. My thought process here is your daughter is hearing prompting ideas, but that's the same thing as you coaching other people and saying like, "Hey, what do you think?" and allowing some brainstorming to happen. And so does your daughter end up now kind of initiating that because she's so used to understanding like how you're setting up the dynamic? I would love to hear more about it.
She does sometimes. She'll, we'll be reading a book or something and we'll finish and she'll say, "Let's talk about my day now. Let's talk about what I'm grateful for." I learn lessons from her every day. She teaches me a lot. And one thing that I've learned from my little 3-year-old daughter is how resilient people can be. She's always trying to find a way to get what she wants, where if there's something on a high shelf in the pantry, I'll come in and I'll see a chair there in a box that she's put on it. I mean, she's like, nothing's going to get in my way. And the other thing is that I've learned from her is she gets very frustrated when she can't do something for the first time. And yet every day she's doing more and more. It's like she'll wake up and she'll start saying words that she didn't say yesterday, or she'll start being able to do something physically with her body that she couldn't do. So even though she gets frustrated, and I think this applies to adults too, even though you get frustrated when you can't do something the first time, it's part of the learning process. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to recognize that everything that you're really good at now, you were terrible at the first time that you did it. And as long as you can kind of find that patience and be able to get past that immediate frustration of not being perfect, you'll continue to grow and develop.
And would she say something like, "I'm grateful that I got through that"? Something like that.
She usually doesn't recognize it, but she's more about being grateful about either the silly things or about, the things that kind of a 3-year-old cares about. But yeah, the lessons that she teaches me are more important in that regard, about being resilient.
And it's such a really, really sweet experience to know that you can talk with your daughter in such a way where she's learning and growing and kind of like having this self-dialogue with herself, whether we realize it or not. She's making those decisions for herself daily. And I find that so true for each of us. If we constantly have those purposeful conversations, whether in meetings or in, with our family, with our friends, how much more we can grow as individuals. So how do you constantly cultivate that? And I love to know, any examples you may have, either from your corporate setting or in your day-to-day experience. Like, how do you constantly create this purposeful experience so that there's more of, you know, like I guess a results driven type of experience instead of trying to focus on only the problems.
So what I'll say to that is two things. One is know what you want. So know that you know, set your goals, have your vision of where you want to go, even if you don't know how you're going to get there. That's really important. And that's been my experience over and over again is I'll know where I want to be, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. And things start to happen and doors open up and you'll figure it out as you go. Have that confidence that no matter what happens, you can handle it. And that's really empowering. That really opens up your potential and your possibilities. And then the other thing is believing in yourself. And I've found in my own life, in my career, when I want something and I believe that I can get it, I'm able to figure out how to make it happen. And that might mean making a connection with somebody who can open a door for you or can show you the way, give you some guidance. It might be that you have to learn a new skill or you have to improve in certain areas, play to your strengths. Whatever those things are, as long as you really want it and you believe that you can get it, you'll find a way to make it happen. So I've had that experience over and over again in my life.
That's really powerful. And I want to quickly follow up in the idea that I find that you used to be very relatable. Like, no, you and I don't necessarily have the same background experiences. And there's something about you that when you talk that says like, I can I can connect with you. Why is that? Like, how can someone build those skills of being able to connect with others so that they too can, I guess, be either more present or more full of themselves instead of trying to kind of be someone else and then put themselves in a box and, make things happen that way.
Yeah, that's something again that I had to learn. So it's not something that came naturally to me or that earlier in my life I was very good at. Part of it is I'm really curious about other people. So I love to meet other people. I love to learn about their backgrounds, about what makes them tick, what they care about. And that's really helpful when you're trying to form connections. So if I feel like I'm talking about a lot about myself on this podcast, I'd much rather be asking you questions. But if we were in a different setting, at least half the time I'd be wanting to learn about you and where you've been and where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. I've traveled all over the world for work and in my personal life. And one thing that I've noticed is when you get past the meeting rooms and the agendas and all of that, and you just start talking to people, we're much more alike than we are different. It doesn't matter where you grew up. It doesn't matter how you were raised. We all are afraid of the same things. We all care about the same things. We all want the same things for the most part. And so just kind of peeling back some of those layers and getting past the facades, and you start to realize that people are people. And so, that's something that I've really enjoyed learning in my life. I also was raised to believe that everybody deserves respect, whether they look like you or not, whether they come from the same neighborhood as you or not, they all deserve respect. And so I've always tried to lead from that angle. And I think that's helped me in my career. Even if there's somebody that I disagree with, even if there's somebody that I just don't mesh with, we don't have, similar personalities and all of that, I still try to treat them with respect, and I still try to learn from them whenever I can. And that's helped me tremendously throughout my career.
I was just curious about that part. It's so hard sometimes if you don't agree with somebody. you don't really want to be around that person.
Yeah,
How do
now
you kind of work on still
let
being
me
in the room and having respect?
sorry to interrupt you. Let me just say there are certain toxic behaviors that you shouldn't tolerate, right? That you don't want to put yourself in environments of negativity or be around toxic people. I get that. And I'm not trying to say that you should invite that into your life. I don't think that that's true. But what I am saying is there's something that you can learn from everybody. And one of the most freeing things for me has been breaking away from my need to be liked by everybody or my need to get external validation from other people. It obviously feels good. You make a contribution or you say something that people like and all of that. I get that. But if that's something that you really need to get that external validation from people, that keeps you locked in a certain way of being. You have to continue to kind of behave in a certain way, knowing that that's what other people want you to be. Whereas if you can believe in yourself and get that validation from within yourself, you're able to be authentic and to be free, and you don't have to live by the expectations of other people. So that's something that takes a long time to learn for me, at least, and it's not easy, but it's something that's really empowering.
And it goes back down to your values, right? Because
Right.
there's a center point there that goes into your actions and how you believe in yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I'm just like making all the connections that you were going for, in terms of the talk on leadership to communication and working with so many different kinds of individuals with different stories and backgrounds, and still finding ways to make big breakthroughs, right? You're talking from like a 3-year-old to like an adult who's very experienced in their career. So I'm super impressed with the flexibility, the cultivation, the constant learning that you have. And I'm going to end with the final question of who or what inspires you?
Wow. So I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by you, and I'll tell you why. When you reached out to me through LinkedIn and DM'd me and asked if I'd be on a podcast, I'd never done a podcast before. And my initial reaction was, whoa, that's scary. Something that I've never done before. I haven't done a lot of video. But I thought, I'm going to try this because number one, if there's something that scares me, I know I probably need to do it. And number two, it's going to be a great learning experience. So I'll do this podcast, and whether I do it well or not, I'm going to learn from that. And next time it'll be a little bit easier and I'll have a little bit more confidence in it. And so I'm inspired by you that you reached out, because that's hard to do, make connections with people you don't know, and that you're doing this as your own way of learning and growing in your career, and you're helping me in the process. So thank you for that.
Wow, I'm so grateful for your words. I did not expect that. But again, thank you for, being the person you are. I just like you have that passion to be curious and really hear other people. I find that resonates with me very much so. And I think the more we can all learn from each other, the less we have reasons to discriminate or judge and, put again people in a box or feel like what they say is not as important as what you have to say, etc. And I think that just creates harmony, one for yourself and then two for your environment and the people around you. So thank you for all that you do and the teachings you share on LinkedIn, and for all the people who constantly, reinforce what you're saying with their own life experience. I'm very inspired to know how many people you raise awareness with in terms of self-development, self-mastery. So where can people find you? I think we already figured that out, but is there
Yeah.
any other space?
Yeah, I post daily on LinkedIn on the topics of transformation and personal growth. And I'll send you a link to my profile. You can include in the show notes if you want. It's really easy to get to me there. And that's probably the best place for people to find my information.
Perfect. And any final words for our audience or anything that's on your mind?
Just thank you. Your voice is really important, so I appreciate that you're sharing it with others, and it helps a lot of people to learn from you. And also, I just want people to know that they can do a lot more than they think they can. That's been my life learning, that whenever I had these kind of limiting thoughts or beliefs about myself, and I've been able to break through those, I've grown from that. So keep believing in yourself, keep trying new things, keep taking those risks to find out where you want to go and what you want to do, and you'll be impressed over time what you're able to accomplish.
Yeah, and you heard it from Justin. So if you
You can do it.
haven't done so, do that. Whatever thing that you're thinking about that has been on your mind that you've been putting on the back burner, but you know you're super passionate about it. So let's go and execute, be value driven, and hope to see you next time. So thank you everyone for listening, and hope you have a great day.